nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast. I am Cammy Black. You're getting not one but two podcasts this week. This first one we're doing tonight is our review of the Lions' second test against the Springboks. That's all we're talking about tonight. So get involved in the comments, and we'll pick up some of the best ones. We're doing a second one later in the week, which is going to be our preview of the third test, but we'll also have a review of the first week of the Forsock Super Six as well, because there is some other rugby going on, which is refreshing for reasons that we'll no doubt get into this week on the podcast. Joining me to wade through the utter mess that is Lions rugby this week, we have Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening. How are we doing?
And Jonny McGinty. Good evening, Jonny.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm very good. I'm more sober than I was last week. I don't know if that's going to help. I can't decide if that's going to help or not. We'll see. Before we get started, there's a bit of news, Lionsy related news, in that this afternoon or this evening, World Rugby have, after over a week, have decided that they're going to investigate Rassie Erasmus. But not only that, Jonny, they've given the Lions a slap over the wrist as well.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, all they did was there was a leaked story that Gatland might not have been that happy that Marius Jonker was the TMO.
Yeah, that's it.
and they've basically they've gone the full Donald Trump good and bad people on both sides route, and basically equated Rassie's hour-long rambling nonsense to someone saying that Gatland might have not been happy with the South African TMO, which is a bit of a stretch. But
yeah, I guess it's a shot across the bows, isn't it, Craig? Saying, look, if we can't prove you're briefing against the referees, but if you are, please, would you kindly stop it? Go to your room and think while you do, while I kind of deal with the worst one.
Yeah, definitely go and stand in that corner over there, and just I scratched my head when the leak story or the story came out about Gatland and the TMO, and I understand why, but it's like, let's rugby values and all that, hashtag rugby values. You've got to keep the lid on things like that. And then Rassie went all it's my ball and I'm going to take it away if you don't listen to me, sort of thing. And then it just all went downhill from then. So I can understand what World Rugby are doing, but just give me a break.
It's too late, though. I think that's the main issue here. Is it's too little, too late. Is that the World Rugby should have come out with something at least the day after the Rassie video to say that we are conducting an independent, even if they've not got time to make any findings, say we're conducting an independent investigation because we believe it breaches, what is it, Regulation 18 of misconduct in the World Rugby laws. But to do it after the test has happened, it's they've got absolutely no teeth, World Rugby, Johnny.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think they probably have to take a bit of responsibility for what happened on Saturday, because by sitting back and not getting involved, they put the officials in a difficult position. They basically left it open, and then Saturday was a mess.
Yeah.
And they've got to come out and say, we can't have that happen again. And I suppose that's probably what they're starting to do by citing Razzie and giving the Lions a warning. So
they're waiting to see if the Lions won or not, and if the Lions won or not, then it might have gone away. And that's just as you say, they're just being toothless.
I think the problem is that the genie's out of the bottle with a couple of things, though. I mean, first, I think that they're going to have to do something about this, because I was saying earlier in the week on Twitter, there's parallels with the whole Mark Dodson trying to sue a weather system debacle that we had in Japan, where World Rugby charged Scottish Rugby with the fact that Nick DeMarchi, who's the SIU's QC, had made some comments to The Sun about what was happening, and basically said, World Rugby need to watch, otherwise we're probably going to sue. And the World Rugby basically concluded that, I think it was Nick DeMarco said to them, I would never say anything without my clients understanding that I was going to say those things and that they were happy for me to say those things. But at the same time, World Rugby said, we can't prove that Mark Dodson and Scottish Rugby have jurisdiction over Nick DeMarco, i.e., they're his client, but we can't prove that they definitely told him to say it, so we're making no findings. So with the Razzies thing, he's retweeted Jaco Johan, who at this point I understand from this AP Cornu, who's a South African rugby journalist, his understanding is Jaco isn't Razzie Erasmus. And the jury might be still out on that a little bit, but he said it on good authority that there is actually a Jaco Johan or someone posting. So all Razzie's done is retweeted that video and said, oh, it was a good game. Come on, we don't need to highlight these things. Then he highlights something later in the week on his own video where he says, this is about players, and frames it in, please don't pick up an injured player. But he's not critical of the referee in that tweet. He would say, I was educating young South Africans on safety in rugby. Then the hour video that comes out was released on some random South African guy's Vimeo account, which Razzie presumably can turn around and say, well, that wasn't me. This was intended for an internal audience at World Rugby. That's who I sent the video to. How it got out, I don't know. Maybe it's a leak your end. So I think it's going to be hard to prove, Craig. But at the same time, if World Rugby do nothing, then what's to stop, other than the ghost of rugby values holding people back and just their more, people's own moral fortitude? There's nothing to stop this happening again unless they take action.
Well, all moral fortitude has gone out the window this week in the first place. But I think from what I can tell and what I've listened to, a lot of this is a regular thing for referees after the game, and they'll get a set of points that have come from each coach, and they have to go through them once they've done the review. And Razzie is saying that if I'm writing this, I might, this is how I take it. He couldn't talk to the referee on the Sunday, or the referee wouldn't speak to him on the Sunday, and he was very upset about it. And I think, he can probably turn around and say, well, that was internal because it was going to go to the referees, so that once they've done the review, they can come back and talk to me because I couldn't get in touch with anyone on the Sunday. But also, they keep saying that referees need some time players need time after a game to reboot and set up, calm down and think about things, and the referees need that as well. So it's just a poor position to put everyone in, and everyone just seems to be walking on eggshells at this moment in time, and I think it's ridiculous.
Is there anything World Rugby can do, John? I mean, are we going to have to see I was thinking the only thing I can see that they can do is to do a complete shutdown of all social media for coaches and players, a bit like gambling, and say that within, 48 hours before and 48 and a week after a test match, you are not allowed to tweet anything about the test match other than generic good luck messages or thumbs up or photos. You can't tweet anything at all.
That's the only way I think that it's probably going to completely stop. But I think it does so much unintended damage in other areas that it's probably not worth it. Because we do like up until about 6 days ago, we liked to see what players had to say, and I guess we'll see what they do if they come down heavy on either or both of the management teams having done these reviews and things. That might start to make a difference. Because outside of that, they do have to do something draconian, I think, to really get it back in hand. And whether we want something that serious for all the bad consequences in other areas that it's going to have, I don't know, is it worth it to stop this from happening again?
Yeah, I suppose it's. I agree with you. I wouldn't like to see it happen because I think it would have unintended consequences of being able to, I don't know, speak freely about what the opposition were up to. I think they can probably say you cut it out with regards to the officials, because there was ways of saying what Razzie was saying without bringing the officials into it, just to say, look at what these cheating sods are up to, rather than to say, why didn't you pick up on it, which seemed to be the way he was framing it, Craig.
Tell you what, though, it might stop us from hearing from Max Laheath ever again, so it's got that going for it.
Yeah, I think the other side for me is I don't want to, I love to hear a bit of controversy coming out of Steve Diamond's mouth on BT Sport and things like that. So I quite like the sound bites. I quite like the knowing that that all these people are just human beings. They're not just these controlled by their union sort of people. But unfortunately, Razzie's just gone about it the wrong way, and he's sounding like a whinger now. Obviously, his team is. Shut us up a little bit over the weekend, but on the other side, he just came across last week as just a whinger, and it just didn't look very good. It really didn't look very good.
Yeah, I mean, it took the pressure off the Springboks, though, Jonny. I guess it's a classic. I mean, I think it was Ian here in our group chat was saying it's a poor man's Alex Ferguson trick, isn't it, to start talking up the referee's impact on a game, and then basically the Springboks team had a week in camp sorting out all the tactical problems while Razzie fronted up and basically took, kind of went and kind of like said to everybody, you look over here, look, don't look over there where our players are and are sorting everything. You look over there, there's another problem over here.
Yeah, it worked. And the other thing that it did is I saw a stat today that there was 2 minutes and 48 seconds of break for every 1 minute of rugby on Saturday afternoon, for all the stuff they were checking and all the niggling, all the fighting and stuff. Now, if you're the team that was blowing through their hoop after 60 minutes last week, that's ideal. Almost 3 minutes of break for every minute that you're playing is exactly what you want, because they were out on their feet, the Springboks, before an hour in the first test. Now, all of a sudden, Razzie's gone out and said, oh, keep an eye on the officials, keep an eye on this, keep an eye on that, stirred the pot a little bit, got a bit of niggle going, and now they're getting plenty of time to rest and get their breath back. So for all the things he was trying, it worked. So
yeah. Malcolm Knox has come up with a suggestion. He says it's all set for an example to be made. Imagine Eddie Jones moving forward, premium subscription for Adobe Premiere, new mic and green screen. I think that's the way to do it. If Gregor Townsend and the SRE are watching, get yourself a Patreon and then put all your criticism of referees and the opposition behind a paywall. And World Rugby can't touch you then because it's behind a paywall.
That's it.
It's not liable if you have to pay to see it. That's what we're working on anyway. We've not been sued yet.
No, that's true.
The other thing, Craig, is that the kind of genie's out of the bottle is the Razzie Waterboy thing, because there's no rule against the director of rugby being on the field of play passing water to the players, and it's been happening for years now. I mean, we saw with Scotland, Mike Blair's been water carrier for Scotland, and he's Scotland's assistant attack coach, Embra coach. You had for him it was Nathan Hines was on the pitch, I think, during the Vern Cotter days. So you've always had coaches on the pitch, and they've all got earpieces in, so they're obviously passing on instructions from the head coach. I don't think there's any point having any restrictions anymore other than maybe the numbers. So you say to coaching steps, you can have whoever you want down there pitch side, however you want to work that out, but you can only have 2 water carriers and 2 members of medical staff, or however many you would need. So you have 2 water carriers, 2 members of medical staff. How you arrange that amongst yourselves? If you want Jacques Nebar down as your physio, fine, you can do that. But that only leaves you with 3 other spaces to fill your backroom staff. Is that the solution, do you think?
It's almost going down the route of the so-called what do they call it? The box in football. You know, the space where all the subs and the management team can walk up to the side of the pitch, and that's as far as they can go. They're not allowed to go outside it. I used to see Roddy Grant, is it Roddy? Yeah, at Edinburgh used to shout and scream and go on with the water bottles all the time when he was coaching at Edinburgh. So, it's been going on for years. So it doesn't really matter who it is, as long as it's not, I'm getting a little bit fed up of water carriers coming on. The minute anybody takes a knee, there's water carriers on and they're all yapping away. And I was always told, as I was a coach, the minute a player crosses the whitewash, their head's so far in the game that you don't shout at them, you don't have a go at them, you don't talk to them about what's going on, because it's up to them to go out and get on with it. I don't know what okay, it's coming out the horse's mouth this time, and he's I don't know if he's such a talismanic coach that they love hearing from him on the pitch. But if it was me, I wouldn't want my coach walking on with a water bottle to give, to say, oh, by the way, you need to lift your leg that way, you need to do this. Look, piss off back. Oh, sorry, but get back there and is it the watershed? Go back there and stand at the side of the pitch now. So it depends what the players. I don't know whether they get a choice in it or not, but
yeah. And we've got Bishopton Boy says, of course, Johnny, that for years Neil Jenkins has been bringing on the water for the kicker for the Lions anyway. So you're on mute, Johnny.
Don't know how that happened. No, Jenks is one of the most successful kickers ever, and he's on three tours now of bringing on the water and the tea, and he'll stand beside Dan Bigger or Rowan Farrell and go, "There's your water bottle, there's your tea. By the way, this is what I would do," and it feels a bit rich for me, for the Lions staff to be complaining about Rassie doing it when they've got Jenkins going on for every single kick at goal, and he's a kicking expert. And also, if we want to get technical about it, Rassie's not their coach.
No,
yeah, but I think it's the Vladimir Putin situation, isn't it? Where he couldn't he couldn't be coach any longer. He'd come to the end of his term, so he's promoted upstairs, and then brought his physio in as head coach. And then,
are you saying that all the guys in the picture just saying yes, Razzie, knows Razzie, in case they get put on a bus somewhere?
Yep, that's it. To the gulags. He's all kind of motivational cat posters as Razzie on the outside, but I bet underneath it all there's a ruthless.
Yeah, it's all tears on the documentary, but out he comes in his special uniform later on.
That's Patreon subscribers can get access to Craig's illustration of Razzie's special uniform. Involves leather chaps. Anyway,
you've taken that too far.
What we're going to do we're going to have some new sections on the podcast, and one of them we've come up with is called BAMs and Belters. So we thought we'd give it a run out tonight as a wee test for the second test. So BAMs are BAM pots. It's not necessarily a person, but it's the kind of moments or where something stupid, something bad, something daft happened. We can talk about that. That's the bad part. And Belters, self-explanatory. It's the good parts, and the reason we're trying this tonight is because it feels like we need to at least attempt to come up with some belters after that game. So we'll do the easy thing first. Let's do the BAMs. What have you got for your first BAM, Johnny?
My BAMs are actually quite interlinked. and it's two people in one moment, all in one go, and it's Mako Vunipola and Ben O'Keefe in the third or fourth minute of the game, where Vunipola's challenge was an absolutely stuck-on red card. And if Ben O'Keefe had just, I don't want to say fronted up, but if he'd sent Mako off that early for what was guaranteed a red, I don't think any of the rest of it would have happened. Because he's laid a marker down there and gone, listen, I know everything that's happened. We know what we expect to see here, but that's a red card and you're off. Then I don't think that a lot of the rest of it happens. So that set the tone for me, I think, and that's where it kind of snowballed from there.
We saw that, was it 2016 Calcutta Cup with Fraser Brown? Do you know?
So.
You know, early minutes of the match, comes in, absolutely smashes an England player, and then he was off the pitch. That was it. Was that a red card? Was it a yellow?
I think it was a yellow.
I think it was a yellow, but it's still the same thing. It's still the same thing. It's the decisions you see in other games that go the way of a referee. It's the boys will be boys decision, effectively saying, all right, I know it's the first couple of minutes of the match, but just settle down, eh? And we'll just call it a penalty and say no more about it. But you're right, Jonny. I think given everything that had happened the week before and in the week, that it's by the book and the letter of the law, it's a red card, Craig.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And the thing is, and this moves on to one of my bams, is Ben O'Keefe's refereeing and the TMO's refereeing of the game. They were on such, okay, fair enough, everything that's gone on in the week hasn't helped, but there were several points within the game that he needed to front up and say, no, I'm not standing for this. One was Mako Vunipola. The second one was Cheslin Colby. I know he's supposed to walk on water, but he had a head-to-head clash with Tom Curry. He was quite obviously concussed. Then went cracking on and rattled into Conor Murray in the air. And Conor Murray did not fall on his back. He wasn't even on his back. He didn't even roll on his back. His face went straight into the turf. I may not be Conor Murray's best pal at this moment in time or best fan, but I'll tell you what, he didn't deserve that. And I think that should have been a red card. I think, first of all, the head-on-head contact. If that was in the Northern Hemisphere, both Mako Vunipola would be off the pitch and so would Cheslin Colby.
Ross Marno on the comments says, no way Mako gets red. With O'Keefe's anatomy now, it was clearly a hit in the back. There was also there were so many incidents that just don't, and I think the number of sightings afterwards is hugely disappointing as well. Like, given that even the Faf shot on Conor Murray in the first half, if that's not a red, it's a pen or a yellow, it's still a penalty because it's not, even if he's not made contact to the head, it's still a no arms tackle.
Yeah.
There was no, both Colby and Faf did not bend. There was no knee bend. There was no hip bend. They were straight in, flat, straight up. It was a Nolan Farrell type tackle, and it was ridiculous. And okay, fair enough. We all know that the Southern Hemisphere, especially the New Zealand and Australian refs, do not see head-to-head contact as the way that our the referees in the Northern Hemisphere are seeing it at this moment in time. But it's on a world stage, and we should be setting an example. And whether it's one of ours or one of theirs, it has to happen.
Yeah, I think the other thing is you go, Jonny.
The bit that was really disappointing for me was, as far as O'Keefe was concerned, was actually what happened just after Colby's tackle in the air of Conor Murray, because right at the start, when we had the first kind of big bit of handbags with Etzebeth and Alan Wynne, he called Alan Wynne and Khaleesi over quite rightly and said, right, dealt with the penalty and then said, listen, we've had this, we're not going to have it again, I'm going to start dishing out yellow cards. If we have this again, we'll have yellow cards. And then we had a massive bit of handbags after the Colby and Conor Murray incident, And he called him over again and said, right, he's got a yellow for that dangerous tackle, but if we have this again, we're going to have some yellows. It's like, well, that's what you said originally, so do it now.
Actually,
back yourself up and say, off you go.
Kobe should have had his second yellow for that incident because he makes contact with Curry's face, or it's either Curry or Itoje, because they were both stood there. I can't remember. And obviously, there was a little pushing back and forth between them, but he actually stands up and makes contact with the face, which in the afters is an absolute no-no, making contact with the face. So that's a second yellow, and it's a red, and you're off by the letter of the law. The other Dan Bigger being knocked over by his own player and rolling around like he's been shot in the back.
That was the hooker. That was the South African hooker hit him in the back and pushed him into his own player. Now, okay, fair enough. He made a lot of it, yeah. But there's a lot to be. But then we can maybe move on to another BAM of mine, but I'll talk about that later if you need to. But this play acting is just doing my head in.
Yeah. Okay. What do you want to do yours then, Craig?
For me, there was far too. I'm getting a little bit hacked off with all a mixture of the play acting, the shouting and screaming into people's faces, he tapped me on the head, sir. Maro Itoje, you're a big lad and everyone loves you. Get a grip. There was one point Ty Furlong was meant to be defending eventually it was a 30-meter maul advance by the South Africans, and he's holding on to someone's jersey and looking at the assistant referee on the side. It's like, get your backside back round to the back where the bodies are going and stop them marching you down the field 30 yards, 30 meters. Professional rugby players are getting far too used to the referees telling them, you can do this, you can do that, in their nice accents or their this or that. It's getting crazy. Use it. Use the ball. Use it if they're taking their time, but don't be yelling at them all the time, because especially, for example, in a scrum, you want it to be sitting at the number 8's feet for a couple of seconds while you try to get some forward momentum. But if you've got the referees shouting and screaming at you to use it, it takes away that advantage that you get. So I think, just for me, it's the constant coaching from the referee, and now the players are now starting to look at the assistant referees and the referee. Look what they're doing to us, or they're looking for coaching. It's like, just get yourself back around and get into the mall and stop what's happening.
As you watch the rucks, and you got players in there staring at the referee, going, "Am I okay, sir? Am I okay, sir? Am I okay, sir?" And it's like, it's almost like they're trying to legally protect themselves, so that if the referee says, "No, you're not okay now," they can, it's like play by the rules. The referee should be quiet. I think Wayne Barnes started it all, I think, with his kind of good scrummaging boys, when they're like he's some kind of like 1950s headmaster in a private school.
Yes, sir. I see the amount of scrums you've been in, sir, by the sight of your face. Yeah, of course. He's the only referee I think that wears manliner, but guyliner, I should say. That's it. But no, I just
manliners. I think manliners is what you have to wear after the age of 70, isn't it?
Well, maybe it's in my head for some other reason. No comment. But yeah, I think Nigel Owens hasn't helped, and everyone has started to look into the referees to get involved in. What a fantastic referee, because he's got banter with the lads. And I'm just, we always used to say, and I still say it: play the whistle, go out the first 10 minutes, do everything you possibly can to get into the other team's faces and see what the referee's going to do. And if the referee's going to ping you for this or that, the other, he's going to blow the whistle, and then Yeah. And I think they're professional players. They're training, 4 or 5 days a week and playing at the weekend. They should know what the laws are of the game, and if they are wrong or if they are right. It's ridiculous.
And like you said, Craig, if you want to know what an individual referee's interpretation of the law is, one, they get an opportunity to ask them at the start anyway.
Yeah,
because that whole Italy Ruckgate thing with England, they told the referee they were going to do that beforehand. I said, "Is that okay?" And he said, "Yeah, that's fine. I understand what you're going to do." So at a professional level, they get a chance to speak to the referee to find out his interpretation, and then they've got, like you said, the first 10 minutes of the match to try things. And we've heard rumours that Xander likes to drop the scrum just to find out what the referee's going to do with the scrum, which isn't a bad tactic, but it's not. I think the referee's communication should be whistle. That's it. No warnings. No, you're onside, you're offside. No wait. I can't mind being told. When I was playing, you're onside, you're offside. When you're to wait until the kicker's gone past you. Before you're onside again, it's not hard.
But the referees are so busy. I've seen it in so many international games. They're so busy trying to make sure that the other team are onside that they're missing what's going on in either the ruck or the maul or the scrum. And it's like you need to concentrate on where the ball is and see what's going on. You've got assistant referees that can say he's offside. They've got they've got all their mics on, etc. That they can have clear communication. It's getting ridiculous. Sorry, that's my rant today, Jonny.
The thing is, that's how you win or lose games. And to be honest, I've always thought recently that that's where Scotland are lacking. That's what Scotland really needs to put together to push on to the next phase. Is the very, very good teams adapt to a referee like that, and Scotland have, as a rule, they've had some times where they've been really good at it, but generally they're not very good at it. And that's when you get a great captain and a great team, what they do really well is they adapt to the referee's interpretation. And so if the referee is going to tell you what they're doing at every single stage, it makes it easier to adapt. And then it takes out an aspect of what makes a really good team, I think.
I think the other thing is, though, if the referee just cuts out all communication other than "I'll blow the whistle if there's a foul, lads. I don't give you any warnings. I'll blow up if there's a foul, and you can and then I'll tell you what's gone wrong." Then you don't get the situation that Siya Kolisi was put in, where he felt, and I think the Rassie Erasmus thing kind of detracted from this quite a lot because a lot of people dismissed this. But if Siya Kolisi genuinely felt like the referee was dealing with him differently than he was dealing with Alan Wynne-Jones, that's a legitimate point that he might legitimately feel. Then that cuts that out as well. Then there can be no complaints from either side that, well, he was talking to us, but he wasn't talking to them. He was talking to them, but he wasn't talking to us. Sorry, that he spent all he was in the area all the time, and he was telling them what to do, but he never gave us any warnings. We've seen it with Scotland and Wayne Barnes before. I mean, because Scotland are more successful now, and maybe because Wayne Barnes has refereed Glasgow and Edinburgh a couple of times now, he's on first name terms with the players, and that's how he referees. We've seen before Scotland play Ireland before Wayne Barnes knew the Scottish players, and it was so frustrating watching him refer to the Scottish players as numbers, and yet he's going, "Oh, Connor, Jonny." And from the outside looking in, you're thinking, well, who is this guy? Is he out for a pint with him afterwards? How is he best mates with him? How come he's calling Hamish Watson 7, but he's calling Peter Romani Pete? It's not. So I think you can understand from someone from Kolisi. Kolisi may have had a valid point. Perhaps he was spoken to differently than Alan Wynne-Jones, and maybe that did make him feel like he's been treated differently. The way around that is you say the referee's there to blow the whistle when something goes wrong. I can't think of any other sport where the referee would tell you when you're about to be blown up for something. You're not doing tennis. Careful, you look like you're about to hit that too long. I have to call it out. Or, cricket, that run up doesn't look, Football, I mean, it doesn't happen in football. Do you know what I mean? Like I can't think of any other sport where you get a warning or you get coached by the referee on the pitch.
It's such a weird relationship that we have with the referees. And to the point where we know as fans watching the games what's going to happen when the referees get announced. We look for referee announcements. When the referee announcements come out for the Six Nations, you go, "Oh God, we've got Roman Poit. Great. He's a breakdown cowboy and we're going to get slaughtered." And it's like, there's not another sport in the world where you see that.
Yeah. It's mad. I think the other thing is, well, with the referees and just the official, it's just, it's just a mess. And I don't know why, because we've said before, rugby essentially is a game for cheats and cheaters, and that's the whole. I mean, that's the great thing about the game. It's a game where cheating actually can win you games if you if you kind of stretch your interpretation of the laws, stretch kind of your positioning, and you get away with things. That's the beauty of rugby. But now we've got a situation where you've got trial by social media for all the little niggle stuff and all the little things. And I don't think if you either have to go two ways with it. Is one, we go the way of the referee just buttons up, and unless there's a problem and he blows up, he doesn't get involved. Or you go the other way, and we have two referees on the pitch, and they blow up for absolutely everything. And with the way that rugby's laws are at the minute, you have a game exactly like you had on Saturday, where, as Jonny said, what was it, Jonny? 2 minutes and
48. Yeah,
rest for every
minute.
It's and then essentially, you might as well stick pads on the lads and turn it into quarters and play American football. Because that's what would happen if you go the other way. If you're going to blow up absolutely every little thing, and you're going to have this ridiculous forensic analysis of absolutely everything that goes on the pitch during the game, then the game will become unwatchable.
I think the issue you have is and this is maybe going back to the first discussion we had, was the minute you start bringing the officials and the coaches into social media, where social media is such a wild west of everyone's comments. There are so many, comments go from the wild nut job all the way through to someone trying to make a point. The minute they start coming onto social media and engaging on social media to tell us about the game and how they're hard done by, etc., that's when I feel it's starting to slip. And I think that it's just a difficult. The referees. I'm a great believer. I love a little bit of banter from the referees. We always get them when we're playing the old boys games. It's great to have a referee that can have a little bit of banter. You can have a wee bit of a niggle at them because they're usually old players anyway. I like a little bit of banter. I don't mind the names. I don't mind Wayne Barnes knowing saying, right, Xander, can you not do this? Can you not do that? Please don't stop hitting that boy, Xander. But I just think, it just gets too far when I just feel the coaching of the game, having Razzie going on with the water, as the water boy is ridiculous, and having, having any helper on the pitch, giving the guys, telling them what they should be doing, and also having the referees coaching on the pitch is ridiculous.
I think the thing is, last week when we were talking about this, I thought, look, I wasn't bothered by the Razzie thing last week, but I've kind of changed my mind on it a little bit, because my view was, look, this is a bit of fun. It makes it a bit more entertaining. And, there was a lot of pearl clutching and, oh, God, this is going to seep into amateur rugby. As amateur rugby coaches have got time to put together an hour video to put on social media, and anyone's going to bloody watch it. Like the Border Referee Association watching the Peebles coach moaning on for an hour about some decisions. That's not going to happen. But the other part we thought, I think people have got the emotional intelligence to realise that professional international, that this isn't real life, that this is a sideshow, it's a bit of a circus and it's a bit of fun. People will surely recognise that that's what's happening. But actually, all the last few days have shown me is people absolutely do not have that level of emotional intelligence or understanding. There are people in South Africa who genuinely believe that Rassie Erasmus put that video out to highlight dangers to players, and that he was entirely innocent. And that, you point out, saying, I think he's probably done this just to take some pressure off his own players. Sure, you can see that going, oh no, our South Africans are always hard done by. I think somebody even said, I think the highlight was, nobody would come and play us in the 80s. It's like, well, very good. Strapping lads.
I don't know how related that was to your player safety, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, it's ridiculous. No one used to eat our apples. It was ridiculous.
Us poor South Africans. If only there was a reason why you wouldn't play us in the 80s. It's ridiculous.
This is the same team that the last time the Lions went there were trying to get a red card for gouging rescinded. Like, at least be consistent, guys. Come on.
Well, it's Graham Love on Twitter was suggesting that there's going to be black armbands like there were in 2009 with Justice for Razzie on them. Taken to the pitch.
That was great. Sorry, but that was brilliant. It's like, I don't mind. You can ban me from going on. You can keep me away from the pitch side. You can put me out in my car in the car park, whatever you do. But I have to say this. Get crap.
Just for the good of the game.
The good of the game, yeah, Razzie. Okay, go back and cry about my pimpy for a little bit longer. Come on.
The other thing that bothered me was the other reply I got from a couple of, has to be said, white South Africans was a photo of Maro Itoje kneeling on a white South African player's chest, and it was his chest because you could see the piping of the neckline of the shirt. He was kneeling on his chest, saying, "This doesn't look good from a Black Lives Matter point of view. This is where all the, we had Black Lives Matter and George Floyd because a man knelt on another man's neck." And like, I don't think you're making the point you think you're making.
Yeah, it was not a good look.
No.
I saw that a couple of times and I was just like, no, guys, please don't.
No, there's so much. I'm not even going to spend time. I could do an hour-long video, Razzie Erasmus style video. I was nearly tempted to do that, unpicking exactly why that's wrong with yellow circles around the tweets. My BAM was the Lions Mall is a nutter shambles, and for all people are saying that this is Gregor Townsend's fault, which is not, and Steve Tandy's fault is not. It's the Mall defense was just, and I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe the South Africans have got a ferocious Mall. How nobody saw that coming is either unthinkable or unforgivable. I don't know what. And I don't know what I don't know what's happening, whether or not it's the coaching or whether it's the players. Because there was a lot of players who were taking a long time to loop round to the back of the Mall.
It's an almost catastrophic lack of Adam Beard is the problem.
That was one of the things I was going to say, Jonny, is that, it's Tooney's fault. It's Tooney's fault. Hang on a minute. Your option is to go and get even bigger boys. We're playing the wrong game. I understand that, but it's mainly Gatland ball, is it not, to put big boys and rattle them into folk?
Yeah. And I think there's the one just before the Pimpe try. It was just like Tom Curry did it was like he had no turning circle whatsoever. He came out of the Mall and then took an absolute age to get around to the back of it. And Scotland have got such a great Mall defence at the minute. I couldn't really. It just looked like they'd never mauled before.
But again, they've played a certain amount of forwards together in certain games that they've played on the warm-ups, and then what they did was take them apart and put them in different. They had no consistency with their forward pack. We were building up. Everyone was getting excited. You could see the different pods that were being created: the back row pods, the second row pods, the front row pods, and then they just blew it apart and said, "Actually, we're going to start these guys," and they threw it all together. How it's going to be fairly mixed up, and I just even the first test saviour Mako Vinapola couldn't hold it. Was struggling with the scrum. The scrum side of things. So set piece was an absolute nightmare for them, and I just felt South Africa did the homework, and they did a good job.
But it wasn't like the lineup went quite well in the first half, Jonny. It was all they got. Maro Itoje we lost our own lineup, then somehow managed to get a 5-metre scrum. Yeah,
that was a big boy play from Maro Itoje, because that could have been disastrous. It was a big call, first of all, to go for the kick to the corner, and then messing up the line, or not even necessarily messing up the line out. You've got to get your line out absolutely dead on against the Springboks. And Luke de Jager was having absolutely none of it. Franco Mostert was having none of that. And then for Itoje to bundle a unit as big as Etzebeth over the line was a serious big boy moment, because we could have been in big trouble there. I mean, we ended up in big trouble anyway, but that's the sort of thing you don't take chances with against the Springboks.
No. What's your next BAM then, Jonny?
I'm going to have to say Jack Conan, I'm afraid. And I don't think it's necessarily his fault, because he's been good this tour. he doesn't do well with a pack that's going backwards, does he? with a scrum going back. He plays for Leinster, so he's not dealt with it very often. But the moment where Conor Murray nearly got decapitated by Faf de Klerk, that was almost entirely Conan's fault, because he picks the ball up at the back of the scrum and just goes nowhere and stands there for a second and then sort of panics and ships it off to Conor Murray, and he gets mullered. And he was kind of a bit like that all day, I think. It was a situation that he's not used to, and he didn't handle it very well.
Yeah, I think the first try he was a bit at sea with as well. He was kind of taken off guard with the kick.
Yeah, I think he's just in a place that he's not really been before, and hasn't really adapted, I don't think.
Yeah. Craig, your next BAM?
My next BAM's Conor Murray. The walk on water, can't do anything wrong. He saves the day every day. He was absolutely garbage. I'm sorry. He was slow to the rucks, slow while in the rucks, kicked the leather off it all the time. Why give the ball back to the South Africans when they're already playing fairly hard at you, or they're kicking the ball to you so that our back three can drop the ball? Although I will say, in Hogg's defence, he did catch it twice, so he did a very, compared to the other two back three, two out of the back three that dropped every ball that came near them. But I think Conor Murray just this whole thing of, Conor Murray's here to settle things down and control things. He may have controlled things, but we couldn't. Controlled play against the Springboks is playing into the Springboks' hands, and the only time we actually looked like we were doing anything that we gained any meterage was when we started throwing the ball around a little bit. It was a bit crazy, and the Harris's basketball pass, etc., looked a bit wild. But I think when you're playing against a team that are very, very destructive in your set piece, using being slow at the ruck, being slow for your kicks, etc., gives them plenty of time to set up to then shove the ball back down your throat as you give it to them. So I felt Conor Murray was just to the point of I wouldn't have him in the test team.
It was interesting that he came the post-match interview, because I was watching the highlights back on Channel 4 to remind myself kind of what had happened during the game, and there was a post-match interview that I hadn't seen with him where they said, what happened, and he said, I'll have to watch the game back, I don't know. And I think I get, they're in the moment and they need to review the game, and I get maybe forwards might not always remember exactly what's going on in the game with the intensity of it, but I think as a back, you should be, especially someone like a scrum half, and your scrum half and your fly half and your fullback should know what's happening in the game and how tactics are affecting things, and should be able to work out what's going right and what's going wrong and be problem solving on the pitch. So that response of, I don't know, I'll have to watch the game back, suggests that that either tactically there was no plan B, or he's not able to think creatively on the pitch, because maybe he's not used to being under pressure in the same way that, for what a better expression, Ali Price is used to playing under pressure, both for Glasgow, and that's not a sly Glasgow dig, Jonny, I promise you, and for Scotland, and it's that France game in particular, where Scotland were under a lot of pressure, and Ali Price really dug Scotland out of a hole in that game. Conor Murray played poorly, I think, and I agree with Craig.
Yeah, it's not hard to work out what's gone wrong as well when the answer is everything.
With my ban was kicks. The kicks were, you can talk about Greg. People are kind of saying, it's Gregor Townsend's attack, and they should just let Warren Gatland take over, as though Warren Gatland's entirely just kind of delegated attack to Gregor. Gregor Townsend's off in his wee hotel room making notes and not speaking to any of the other coaches. It's utterly ridiculous. But there maybe wasn't anything wrong with the tactic of kicking, but the execution was really poor because they were just basically, as we saw in the South Africa game, you kick straight to the South Africans, they'll just run it back at you and they'll probably run through you or run around you and they'll score tries and they'll cause you problems. If you kick behind them or you kick into space and you put in contestable kicks like they did in the first test, then you'll cause them problems and you put them under pressure. The South Africans did to the Lions what the Lions did to South Africa last week. I mean, people talk about Hogg spilling the ball, but Hogg was having to come a hell of a way. I mean, Jonny, you're a fullback. Hogg was having to come a hell of a way to get some of those kicks.
Yeah, he's coming from really, really deep because the organisation in front of him was basically non-existent. And by the time he gets there, because Faf de Klerk and Andre Pollard are kicking so well, by the time he gets there, so's the entire South African defensive line. And I actually think it was you that put something up, Cammy, on Twitter on Sunday, saying, where's the Lions forwards here? Because Hogg comes up and gathers a ball, and the entire South African line's there. Henshaw and Harris do a decent job of trying to clear them out, but the forwards are nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
Now, Hogg's powered 40 or so yards to come and gather that ball. The centres have tried their best to come in and help him, and the forwards are just completely at sea, while the entire South African defensive line spills over the top of them. So Hogg was poor on Saturday. There's no getting away from it, but he didn't get a lot of help, and he needed a lot of help.
I think he was poor, but nobody else would have been better. I think that's the bottom line. We'll come on to a minute about who we might pick for the third test. But I think Hogg was poor, but I'm not saying that anybody else is going to do better. Liam Williams is poor all too. It's not like he's kind of sat on the sidelines with money in the bank reputation-wise or form-wise. So Hogg played poorly, but ultimately the Springboks were good and they kind of exploited a weakness with the Lions. And like you said, the forwards were just nowhere to be seen. And it's a problem that Scotland have had. I think that's a Steve Tandy issue because if you look at the reason Zander got the red card against Wales, that was because you had two backs contesting a ruck and Zander had to come in from distance to clear out. And he's hit the Wyn Jones in the head and got red carded. Now, a better defensive setup, we would have at least one forward there to support and help repel the backs a little bit. I mean, Henshaw and Harris aren't small by any means, and they did a reasonable job of trying to kind of protect the ruck. But against
they're not even Elizabeth.
No, exactly.
But this also is the payoff for choosing bigger, more aggressive guys, like Connie Laws, etc., to try and match them up front. Then they will slow down because they're having to get themselves up and down off the ground all the time. And that's where, for example, people like Hamish Watson, Tom Curry as well. He was around, and you could see him. But a lot of the big guys were still getting themselves off the ground because that's what they do. They smash and then they try to get, they're having to pick themselves up and down off the ground and they get tired. But then we didn't kick. We didn't kick smartly though, and that's the other thing is that why aren't we okay? I'm going to totally contradict myself here because in the second half the line out was horrendous, but we weren't kicking for touch. We were just kicking the ball back to the South Africans, and then we were looking at ourselves going, "Oh, what happened there? They've kicked it back and we've dropped it." Because we were poor at catching the ball. Even Conor Murray, for example, got in the way of Duhan, and people are really slating Duhan for his game on Saturday. But the rest of the Lions didn't help him.
No, I think these bad performances don't happen in isolation. They're not. The Duhan and Stuart Hogg are not the reason the Lions lost at the weekend.
No, absolutely not.
No, and that keeping the ball in with the kicks is a deliberate tactic that in the first test, the Springboks had 4 lineouts, which coincidentally is the least since they played Wales in the semi-final of the World Cup when Gatland gave them 6 lineouts. Now, it worked really well for Wales in the semis. It worked really well for the Lions the first week. It was not working on Saturday to keep the ball in and let them kick it back. And for whatever reason, Conor Murray and Dan Biggar, whether they felt they didn't have the authority or whether they didn't have the realisation, didn't think to go, right, let's change this tactic. Let's get it out. let's have some more line-outs and let's see if we can contest some. They just kept kicking it to them, leaving it in play and letting them kick it back. And it was a problem. And it's a tactical problem because it was what they were told to do and they should have changed it and they didn't.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because Gregor Townsend said afterwards, the first half our game plan was working and we felt like we were in a good place. And I think if you look back at it, they probably were. And I think that's the trick. They were almost lulled into a false sense of this is going exactly how it went in the first test. We can see the way this is going. We've got them under pressure. Actually, at that point, the Lions had they'd had more penalties in their favour than the Boks. For all everyone saying that Ben O'Keefe was biased, I think the Lions actually at one point had far more penalties awarded for them in the first half. But then I think the problem is they weren't expecting the Springboks to try something different in the second half, and they didn't have a plan B. We talked about Scotland not having a plan B before, and I appreciate the two Scottish coaches in the box. So.
I think if we turned it round, if they turned the subs or the finishers or whoever you want to call them around the other way. So if you had them, if you had Mako and oh goodness, if you had them the round, so the first test subs were in the second test subs bench, I think you probably would have had a better chance at it because they were heavier, they were stronger, and they would have hopefully increased the South Africans' tiredness. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. They would make them more tired. They would fatigue them far more. But they kind of had a what's the word? They kind of had a heavier pack sitting on the bench, and they didn't really. They gave the South Africans some time to just reset, and breathe.
Yeah. Should we do some belters then? I mean, we've got the. We said we're not going to allow any of the stuff. Chris Harris is a belter because he's, I think it's a standing belter done with Chris Harris. I actually thought his part. I was quite sneaky in that my belter was his partnership with Robbie Henshaw because I actually thought that worked in defence quite well. And I like Henshaw and Harris together as a centre pairing. And like you said, Jonny, that the ruck that they lost, yes, they lost it, but actually they were really quick to get there and to bind together and try and protect the ball. And I saw a lot of that. They obviously it's weird because they had them together at points, I think, in the earlier test games, but then they didn't bother with it in the first test. And I know people have got their doubts about Chris Harris attacking from an attacking sense. Defensively, he's absolutely solid.
Yeah, they're the only unit I'd keep intact from this week for next week. I thought they were both really good. Their partnership's solid. They both know what they're doing. They didn't make many, if any, mistakes. I thought they were probably among the standouts. And as much as people want to see changes everywhere, that's about the only unit I'd keep together. Yeah.
Your belter then, Jonny?
The only other person I think in the starting 15 who came out in credit, which is Tyke Furlong again. Not a huge amount of mistakes. The scrum overall was struggling, which you can't really pin on him, but he did his best there. Was pretty decent in the breakdown. I think pretty much everything in the contact area was going wrong around him, and he still managed to come out with a unremarkable but pretty solid performance.
Yeah,
which is what you want.
Which is what you want. That's the most you can aspire to in a game like that. Craig, your belter.
I think I'm going to go slightly different here. It's going to be the over 6'5" club that's in the South African pack. I think they had a belter. I think Mostart, Etzebeth, and then Luke De Jager. Wow, bringing him on when they brought him on, just fabulous. And they being able to put these bit. If your line out starts going wrong and then all of a sudden they bring a second row on that's about 7'5", you kind of, it just, whoever's, okay, fair enough, maybe it's Rassie or Rassie's decision or whatever, but that was fabulous and they played incredibly well. They were destructive. They were, they mauled incredibly well. Their mauled defence is very, very good as well. So they were belters for me. They were absolutely fantastic. But whatever, you can't really take away from them.
Yeah. We've had a couple of hands in the ruck from our patrons on the our super secret Facebook page. We've got Martin Bell says his British and Irish Lions hands in the ruck is the slight overreaction on the part of some to the Lions loss. The tour has been hyped up with the references to the 99 call and the number of players who ended up in hospital after the second test in 2009. So it seems a bit odd to see so much pearl clutching going on both sides about physicality, excessive or not. On the Lions side, the post-loss recriminations have been way over the top. This was always likely to go to a decider, and maybe winning last week made folk complacent. Do you agree with that, Craig?
Very much so. I think everyone's looked at the Lions team and looked at all the names and looked at everyone that's on it and gone, we're going to absolutely storm this. South Africa have not played a game in these many months, and we're going to show that we're going to win this 2-0. And the Lions opened the door for South Africa to absolutely spank them this weekend, and they did it.
Gordon McCracken says, people who think kick chase involves the two catchers and nobody else. At several points in that game, it was clear that non-back three players weren't protecting or supporting their chasers properly, like when Duhan tapped the ball back and nobody was standing behind waiting to receive it. The Lions back three dropped some easy ones, but fixing things is not just a matter of putting someone in who's a bit better at catching. Jonny, you kind of covered that already, but I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, I think it's bang on.
I think we've covered them all. I mean, the one from Pete Foster, which I think kind of captures a little bit of a mood and worth probably picking up on, is his hands in the ruck was the Lions, the whole bloody concept. It's time to call it a day. No more tours after this one. Let's face it, the Lions are a hangover from the amateur era that increasingly doesn't fit into the professional calendar. This year's truncated tour with very few warm-up matches didn't allow the team to gel and get used to playing together. I can't see any prospect of that changing given the squeeze on available dates from domestic competitions. They need to prioritise player safety by not overplaying them. On top of all that, the increasing one-eyed nationalism of the fans, not to mention pundits and journalism, totally destroys the notion that it's four nations coming together and as one. For all the fallout and all the kind of vitriol from the South African fans this weekend, there's been an equal amount from the other three nations, particularly towards Scottish players. It has to be said. It kind of, I said on Twitter today, it feels like for the last few years we've been stood on the doorstep of a very exclusive club, trying to get in and trying to get membership, and all of a sudden we've been let in. And we find the toilets are blocked, there's poo up the walls, and the other three members are stripped to the waist fighting in the corner. And we ask where our tie is, and they tell us to F off. That's kind of how it feels. It hasn't felt particularly welcoming as a Scotland fan this time around from journal, and that's the press as well. I think that the fallout from this is it's all the Scotland players' fault. There was an article in Wales Online tonight saying the players that will keep their place and the Scottish players in danger, and that's the headline. And I know it's clickbait, Craig, but it kind of stabs at the heart a little bit.
We're in hiding to nothing. To have two of the coaches to be involved in the Scotland international squad, to bring in these players, they're automatically looked upon as, these players are just coming in because Townsend and Tandy are wanting them in there, and then if we win, then it's all the other players, and if we lose, it's all the Scotland players' fault. And I think some of the hands in the rucks have hit the nail on the head with, we must replace these players because the Scottish boys even for example, I think we talked about it before. Ali Price is a liability, and we're going to just give him a go and at least Conor Murray's there. So after 5 minutes, when it all goes wrong, Conor Murray could come on and stabilise everything. That's not happened. The whole hoo-ha about Stuart Hogg. Stuart Hogg was biting. That's terrible. Look at this. Well, actually, he wasn't, and it's been found that's not happened. Well, why? There's not that much hoo-ha about, look at Sinclair. Look at all the videos of Sinclair biting somebody, and he's the one that's up on a charge. it's just ridiculous. We're on a hiding to nothing, and it's the all I can say is more power to the Lions. I enjoy the Lions. I think it's a fabulous thing to be to have if it's done correctly, and I don't think this tour has been done correctly. And what I would say is that we need to batter the door down with more and more and more players, and we need to be there on a regular basis, and that just gives me fuel to the fire. And we need to get better, and we need to have more players within the Lions for the next couple of tours.
Yeah, because that's essentially what they want, isn't it, Jonny? The people that kind of talk down the Scottish fans, they want us to give up and go away as kind of Scotland and the Scotland fans, and just leave it to their little exclusive club that they've always had since 2000. Since the 2001 tour was probably the first when it kind of all went downhill for us. I think I said in the week in our group chat, I said the only way we can save face here is if there's no Scottish players selected this week and they lose. But was it you that said, "Oh, we select Finn Russell and he does something only Finn Russell can do"?
Yeah, I think it was Rory that said it, but I'm 100% in agreement with it, because I think the problem with the other three nations is that I don't think that they all understand what a big deal this is for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is the first time since 1997 that we've had the representation that we've had, certainly in the tests. So this is kind of the first real proper engagement with the Lions for a whole generation, really, of Scottish rugby fans, and so it's a huge deal, and people have to accept it as a huge deal. On the flip side of that, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I'm not prepared to completely let Scotland fans off the hook at the same time. Because there's a really famous quote by Vince Lombardi, the NFL coach, that goes, the first time you get into the end zone, act like you've been there before. And I think there's a lot of Scotland fans on social media not acting like we've been there before. I don't somebody's going to get the blame. There's going to be poor performances, and we have to hold our hands up and say we've had some poor performances. I think we probably are getting undue criticism, and I don't think people are fully appreciative of how different this is for us. But at the same time, we have to kind of take it in our stride a little bit, and we have to act like we've been there before, even though we haven't. We need to kind of get on board a bit.
I think the flip side of that, though, is that the Scotland fans have come in for a lot of flack, as though they're the only ones that are acting like this. I think there's a lot of Scotland fans are insufferable. There's been a lot of chat, and that's been said to me a couple of times. But from my experience of certainly the past two tours, is that Welsh, Irish, and English fans are just as bad. So for all we should act like we've been there before, but I think we need to raise it a level above. I think we need to kind of rise above it almost, and leave them to the stripped to the waist fighting in the corner, and just say act like we're the one, act like we're the ones that have been there the whole time.
Yeah, I'd like to see how they're going to react, because I'm quite happy for Hoggy and Doohan to get all the stick for this weekend, because 1 to 15, apart from maybe Tadhg Furlong and the centres, nobody was good. I'm sorry, but the Lions were outplayed, outmanned, outcoached, outmuscled completely this weekend. So if you want to pin it all on Hoggy and Doohan, then absolutely go ahead, drop them both, do it. And then come Saturday, when Tom Curry's still a bit toothless and Jack Conan's still completely invisible and Conor Murray's still 3 seconds too slow to every ruck, and Biggar and Farrell's kicking is still a bit aimless, fine. Well, you've got rid of all our boys, so you're going to have to come up with some better excuses.
Yeah. That's very true. Coming into the third test then, because we've got the South African team's name tomorrow as we record this. I don't know when the Lions team is going to be announced.
Tomorrow as well.
Is it tomorrow as well? Oh well, Let's have a bit of we've got by the time people get to the end of this podcast, the team will have been announced. But let's talk about who's going to get picked anyway. The interesting thing, I was looking at the last two tours at the number of changes that Warren Gatland's made, and I don't think he'll make many changes, as much as people are calling for people's heads. If you look at the New Zealand, so the Australian one, he made lots of changes, and I think that backfired. So the between the first and second tests, he made 2 changes in the backs and 3 changes in the forwards. And then between the second and third, it was 2 changes in the backs and 5 changes in the forwards. But if you looked at the difference between the first and the third test, there was only actually 1 change in the backs and 4 in the forwards, and some of them were down to injuries. And they won the first and the third test. I think they got complacent in Australia and he made too many changes for the second test. In New Zealand in 2017, it's much tighter, it's much smaller. So there was only 1 change in the backs and 2 in the forwards between the first and second tests. And then there was 0 changes in the backs and 0 changes in the forwards between that second and third test. So I know they got beat, but I think Warren Gatland and the other Lions coaches are going to be sat there thinking, well, it wasn't individuals. We got this wrong tactically. We'll give this 15 another go, and we'll only make changes if we need to change the skill set on the field. So I think Hamish Watson comes in somewhere because they need to be more competitive at the breakdown.
Yeah,
Tagburn might come in.
I think with all that in mind, I think Faletau comes in for Jack Conan because, like I was saying earlier, Jack Conan didn't cope with a scrum that's going backwards, and there is nobody better probably in the world than Tulupi Faletau if your scrum's on skates. So I think he probably comes in because I think he made a difference when he came on Saturday. I think he copes with a backward scrum better than anybody else. And if they must realise that's going to happen again. So that's a tactical change I think they can make that will make a big difference.
Yeah. Craig, the other suggestion that there's obviously they kept Finn Russell around. There was a video of him doing keepy ups and whilst juggling on Instagram yesterday. Does he? Bigger was bigger. You know, he was all right in the first half. I mean, the question is, do they roll the dice, chuck everything at this, and say, "Go on, Finn, we'll stick you on for the start and have a go," or do they tire the box out and try and play some consistent rugby and stick him on in the last 20?
I think bigger. I've seen bigger play in a similar, a very loosely similar mould to Finn Russell when he plays for Northampton. I think, as we've all discussed already, this has been a failure of coaching and a failure of how to take on the South Africans. I think we've tried to. We had the first game. We saw they were going to get tired, so we've reset to let's try and bully them, or let's meet fire with fire, and it's not worked. So I think you may find that Ali Price will start, but you'll get bigger. But I am hoping, and I've got my fingers crossed, that you've got Finn on the bench, and Finn comes on at 55 or 60 minutes, and he gets a good crack at it. I think Finn will. I saw a couple of things happen on the field. For example, Conor Murray kicked over to Henshaw when Henshaw's try was disallowed, and then I saw Bigger trying a couple of Finn-esque kind of kicks over the top to, unfortunately it was right into people's hands, and there was nobody there to chase the ball down and take the ball. But if you saw, we got a passage of play going forward when Farrell came on, and he started throwing some flat passes, and he was taking the ball to the line and then putting a pass into a support player. And that's when we started to gain some ground, and we started to break the defence of the South Africans. And I think that's what Finn will bring. And if they could release Bigger to start doing stuff like that, and then bring either that or bring Finn on to start with and start throwing some flat passes, I think with the centre combination of Henshaw and Harris, I think you will do more to the box than we have done.
What changes do you make then? What changes would well, let's not say would you make, Craig. What changes do you think they'll make this weekend, if any?
I think Duhan's done. I don't think Duhan's going to get into a third test. I think Williams is going to come into onto the wing. I think they keep Hogg at fullback, because Hogg, I don't care what anyone says. Hogg may have had a nondescript day, but he wasn't as bad as everyone thought he was. He was trying to cover. You've got one winger in Cheslin Colby. You've got one winger in Mapimpi, and then you've got and he's trying to straddle the two. One point that was I think it was Will Greenwood was picking him out, saying he shouldn't have been there. He should have been here. Well, no, it was a penalty. It was free ball from a penalty. So he was trying to cover both the wing and a kick. So he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. So I don't actually see I don't see him being dropped. I think he'll retain his place, but I think you will see Williams coming on the wing.
For you then, Jonny, do you think what's your kind of prediction?
Yeah, the same. I think Hoggy stays. I think Williams and Adams both come in if they're able.
Watson was gash.
He. I don't understand why no one's talking about the fact that he was terrible. He was as bad under the high ball as Hoggy and Doohan were, without offering any of the other things that either of them did.
He ran away from a ruck at one point.
Yeah, I think he's the one who's most in trouble, and I don't understand why that's not been repeatedly brought up. So I'm going to start doing it. And I think Williams and Adams probably both come in. I wouldn't be surprised to see Doohan stay, just because of he's got stature to offer that nobody else in the back three does. But I wouldn't be disappointed with Williams and Adams, and I think Hoggy probably stays. I
think Doohan will survive. I think he did enough at the weekend, and I think Adams will come in for Watson, and Williams will come on the bench because he can cover back three. I think the interesting, there was a point in the game where it was the second half, and the scrum was turning, and it turned twice. And on both times, if Murray had whipped, I think it was Doohan versus Colby on the wing, and a quick pass from the base of the scrum, and Doohan would have been in for a try because it was 1-on-1 up the blind side. And I think Ali from there.
Ali Price definitely comes in for Conor Murray, I think, because the
Yeah.
difference in the ruck speed was palpable on Saturday. Conor Murray was so slow. And
Ali Price can't do anything with 15 minutes. He needs longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I can see more mobile back rows is coming in as well for the same reason, to speed it up.
Yeah. The front row, I think Mako probably comes out. I think you're probably looking at a replacement there because
I think if Wyn Jones isn't fit, that we might be in trouble. I think Mako and Suz have both struggled 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row, Suz has struggled really badly. Mako struggled as well on Saturday. I think we need Wyn Jones, at least for some of the game.
Yeah, I think Suz, unfortunately, I'm going to go back to my old adage of overplaying. I think Suz is starting to try and make up for some of his deficiencies, or some of the people that he's going up against some major tight head props, and he's not doing too as well as I thought he would. So I think he's overplaying, and then he's getting penalties against him. He had a couple of needless penalties on the weekend that he could have, if he'd engaged Brain, he probably would have. He probably wouldn't have given. If Wyn Jones is fit, Wyn Jones is in, and then it's a choice between Suz or Mako Vinopola, and I think it's going to be Mako Vinopola. And then on the other side, I would love to see Xander get a shot out.
I was going to say, do you unleash Zandbags into the pressure posh?
We might not have a choice.
No, well, true.
Well, yeah, because Sinclair might not be playing again.
Can you imagine Xander Ferguson?
Oh, I can imagine. we have to be in the pub early on Saturday to make sure we get a table, so I'm going to be extremely excited by the time Xander comes on Saturday afternoon, I think.
I think you'll probably find Byrne, Watson, and Faletau on the back row. But do they want to mix it up? Do they want the sort of the solid performance of Conan instead of Faletau if they're going to change Watson for Curry? But you just don't know, do you? That from what we're talking about tonight, we're probably introducing quite a lot of changes, and that totally goes against everything that you've brought up, Cammy. So
the interesting, I didn't have time to look at the benches. If I'm honest, I looked at the starting 15s. I didn't have time to look at the benches. Didn't have time to look at the benches today. So it might be that's where the changes come. That the changes come on the bench. You get a couple of changes. I think there definitely will have to be a couple of changes, because you can't stick that 15 out again and just ask them to do something different. There will be changes, but I also don't think that you can go into the third test and just completely change the spine and backbone of your team like that and expect them to go out and win a test match against the Springboks. That's why I think, particularly with the back three, that's why I think Hogg and Van der Merwe will stay, because it's they've played together before for Scotland. They were poor in a poor team at the weekend, but you can't change 2 out of the 3 and go into a winner takes all match like that.
No, I agree with you on that one. Yeah. I honestly think it'll be the forward pack that'll be the more stable. I think Tooney will, because it is obvious that it's the backs that they're going to have to change the plan on, because they're going to have to start throwing the ball around and move the ball out to the wings. They've negated Duhan van der Merwe completely because they're not getting the ball to him.
Yeah,
that's his plus point is gaining 20 meters out of nothing, and running over the top of Cheslin Colby and people like that. We've all agreed that he's not the what's the word? He's not a Chris Harris of defence, but he defends well. But his game is going forward, and I think that's the. I think so. You may see that if they're going to do something, they're going to change the backs more than the other forward.
Shocked that Craig thinks the backs are the problem.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not going to say a word about it.
It wasn't the backs. It wasn't the backs that were going absolutely 100 miles an hour backwards in the mall, Craig.
Actually, no. It was the back's fault that we were going backwards in the mall. That's the problem. And and Johnny McGinty's sitting there saying, "Oh, that such and such can't catch a ball. It's ridiculous." No comment, Johnny.
I think on that point, we'll leave it there for. I was going to say we'll leave it there for this week, but we're not. We're back later in the week. Probably it's either going to be Wednesday or Thursday. Obviously, the teams are announced on tomorrow. Then we'll probably be back Wednesday night, Thursday night. We've got John Anderson joining us, maybe you two guys as well. So we'll keep an eye out for when we're doing that. We after that, we're just going to keep doing these now, because Super 6 is going to see us right through till the Ultimate Rugby Championship starts in October. So there's no let up with these podcasts. You're stuck with us, and you're very welcome to.
Got tons of Africans now, eh?
Lucky listeners.
Yeah, John, that's a good point. Actually, Johnny's just made is that if you think kind of at least we only have to deal with South Africans when they come and visit us in the autumn, or the rare times we go there in the summer, or on Lions tours every 12 years. We now have them for the Ultimate Rugby Championship, and as we'll discuss later in the week, possibly the Six Nations, Seven Nations as well. So
bravo.
By that point, hopefully I'll have blocked every single troll in South Africa online, so I won't have to deal with any of their rubbish. So anyway, we'll speak to you all later in the week. And for the moment, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from Craig and Johnny.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.